Chapter 21. The Most Perfect Body. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. This poison was planted by Berg. He must have an antidote on him. L.O. Luffy's lips were dry as he tried his best to suppress the agitation in his body. He searched Berg's body for a while, hoping to find an antidote to the aphrodisiac poison. However, his hopes were dashed. He searched for a long time but still could not find an antidote. I can only try the antidote rune, he thought to himself. Luffy did not panic. He silently chanted the antidote in his heart. A purple rune phantom immediately appeared in the room. The rune phantom projected a holy light. Luffy immediately felt warm all over his body, as if he was soaking in a hot spring. However, the restlessness in his body did not change at all. His breathing became heavier and heavier. What's going on? Why is the antidote rune not effective? As Luffy was looking puzzled, Kamiya's voice sounded. It's useless. The spring poison is not a usual poison. There's no antidote. The antidote rune is also useless. Kamiya's voice was no longer as cold as before. Instead, it carried a strange charm. The antidote rune was useless. Luffy was confused. He understood the situation in his body very well. His mind was filled with lust and he only wanted to have sex. It seemed that only by having sex with a woman could the poison be cured. Woman. There was only Kamiya in the entire house. Kamiya was the #1 beauty in the Simon Empire. She had an absolutely beautiful face, especially under the effects of the aphrodisiac poison. Her face was flushed red, and her bright red lips were like rose petals. Her twisting body constantly seduced the primitive impulse in Luffy's body. He subconsciously licked his lips. You'd better stay put. I've been poisoned by the aphrodisiac poison. If you offend me, I'll definitely make you regret it. Kamiya was extremely beautiful, and even Luffy was tempted. But he understood that he could not touch a woman like Kamiya, or else he would be in big trouble. It was definitely not worth it to be in trouble, or even to be killed, over a woman. A woman like Kamiya was like a poisonous scorpion in the desert. Under her beautiful appearance, there was a fierce aggressiveness and toxicity. Once he touched her, he would definitely suffer an act of crazy revenge. However, his rationality could not suppress the burning desire in his body. He needed a woman, he needed Kamiya's body. Luffy could not control his body and walked towards Kamiya. Don't come over. If you come over again, I'll kill you. Kamiya looked at Luffy who was walking towards her, and she suddenly became nervous. Luffy wanted to release the rune, but his body didn't have any strength at all. On the contrary, this kind of resistance made Luffy's desire magnify again. I also don't want to. Who asked for you to be poisoned by the aphrodisiac? Let me help you detoxify. Luffy simply gave up on his rationality. After all, he had not done it on purpose. He and Kamiya had both been poisoned by the aphrodisiac, and it was not his original intention. No. Don't. Kamiya moaned, but her voice became softer and softer, so soft that it sounded like the chirping of a mosquito. Although her mouth was still resisting, there seemed to be a voice in her heart that kept shouting, yearning, and destroying her psychological defense. Her eyes gradually became hazy, and her expression was seductive and extremely moving. Suddenly, Luffy bent down and forcefully kissed Kamiya's bright red lips. A sweet taste spread on the tip of his tongue. Kamiya widened her eyes, and there was anger and confusion in her eyes. He dared to offend her. She was actually forcefully kissed by this unknown man. This was her first kiss. Before she had time to think, Luffy had already violently pried her teeth, stuck his tongue in, and tasted Kamiya's sweet honey. Kamiya's mind instantly went blank. Ah! Kamiya cried out coquettishly as she was pushed onto the bed by Luffy. His big hand caressed her body without any scruples. He took off her wedding dress and revealed a fair and smooth body. Kamia's body was extremely hot. There was not a single bit of fat on her body. Her long, straight legs were crossed. The most private and sacred parts were faintly discernible, arousing Luffa's endless desire. Due to the aphrodisiac poison, her skin had a layer of pink. It looked tender, like a ripe peach. A mouthful of it was full of juice. Luff used the tip of his tongue to pick up the tip of Kamia's tongue and whispered in her ear, "Don't be nervous." Kamia immediately trembled slightly. He gently removed the hands that were hugging Kamia tightly in front of her chest. A pair of plump and towering virgin peaks were displayed in front of him. Kamia moaned and Luff took one in his mouth. This was the most beautiful and moving body that Luff had ever seen, so he worked harder than ever. He used all the methods that he had mastered, and for a moment, the entire room was filled with the sounds of men and women having fun. The night passed, and Luff didn't know how many times he had been released. At first, Kamia was still a little resistant, and because it was her first time, the progress was very slow and somewhat difficult. But Luff was, after all, a rune master, and his physical fitness far exceeded that of an ordinary person. After feeling the joy brought by the relationship between a man and a woman, she slowly became active. Under the effect of the aphrodisiac poison, she even took the initiative to ride on Luffa's body, crazily releasing her passion. They lingered until daybreak, and only after the effect of the aphrodisiac poison subsided did the two fall into a deep sleep. After waking up, Luff rested his thick arms on his head. His brain had long recovered its calm. Beside him, Kamia had her back to him. Her eyes were closed, but Luff knew that she was awake, too, and just didn't know how to face it. Chapter 22 9-Tailed Demon Fox. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. This result was not in my plan. It was not my original intention. Luff did not feel anything in his heart. After all, it was not his idea for such a thing to happen. However, after all, it was Kamia who was at a disadvantage. As a man, Luff felt that it was necessary to give her an explanation. "I know." Kamia's voice was calm and there was no emotion in it. She was no longer as charming as she had been the night before. She had returned to her previous coldness. But Kamia's heart was not as calm and indifferent as she looked on the outside. It was as if a huge wave had been set off, and she could not be calm at all. The scene of the two of them madly having sex kept appearing in her mind. This made the noble daughter of Earl Wilson feel ashamed. But it was more of an indescribable shyness and joy. At the same time, there was a trace of sadness. The reason she had stayed was to wait for the right man to appear, but now she had given her body to a man of unknown origin. Kamia did not know how she would face her destined partner in the future. Kamia's indifferent reply made the only trace of apology in Luffa's heart disappear completely. He felt much more relaxed. He had had countless women, but they had all been built on equality and mutual benefit. This was the first time he had experienced such a wonderful experience. Smelling the faint fragrance from Kamia, Luff recalled the passionate scene between the two of them last night. However, he quickly extinguished the memories. "Are you waiting for someone?" When he had been welcoming the bride, he sensed the conversation between Wilson and Kamia. He had learned that Kamia had not left Earl Wilson's mansion and had agreed to marry Berg because she was waiting for someone. "Yes." After a moment of silence, Kamia replied, "When I was young, I met a rune master named Xana. She was proficient in divination and had never made a mistake. Shauna divined for me. She said that I would meet someone in the future. If I could wait for him to appear, my future would be limitless. If I couldn't wait." She stopped mid-sentence. Then, she suddenly changed the topic. "What are you going to do about this?" It was an accident." Luff spread his hands. He was not willing to continue with Kamia. She was extremely cold and had a high desire for control. If he continued with Kamiya, he would only be controlled by her. Berg was killed by me. It'll be impossible to tell who did it from the method, so you don't have to worry that this matter will affect you. As for the matter between us, you can rest assured that no one else will know. I can't do anything else. Even though Luff was infatuated with Kamiya's body, if he lost his freedom and listened to Kamiya's orders, he would never be free. Hearing Luff's answer, Kamiya cursed in her heart, bastard. At the same time, she felt a sense of loss. She was the most beautiful woman in the Simon Empire. Many nobles and men wanted to meet her, but they didn't get the chance. This man actually did not want to have anything to do with her. The arrogant Kamiya found this hard to accept, especially since this man had not intended to take responsibility. Although Kamiya did not intend to let him take responsibility, even if he wanted to, she was still a little angry. However, at the mention of Berg's death, Kamiya regained her calmness. You are wrong. They will know the truth because the Grand Tutor has a strange rune that can retrace everything that happened here. He can also see what happened to us. There was actually someone in the royal family who had such a rune. Although Luff was a little surprised, he did not panic at all. Before he had come in, he had set up an illusion in the entire courtyard. As long as it was not a 9-star rune master or a high-level rune master who had mastered the purple rune, it was impossible to see through it. All they could see was the illusion that Luff had prepared in advance. Don't worry, I was prepared. The Grand Tutor couldn't see this. I set up the illusion before I entered the room. The illusion is fake. The Grand Tutor is a 6-star rune master. Although you can kill Berg, I think you are only a 2-star rune master at most. It's impossible for you to resist the Grand Tutor's prying eyes. If you don't believe me, what else can we do? Luff replied indifferently. Although it was an accident between us, I don't want others looking at my woman. So don't worry. The Grand Tutor would definitely have seen something else. It would have been impossible for him to see through my illusions. As Luff spoke, he got up from the bed and picked up the clothes on the ground. There was still one thing to be resolved, and that was Berg's body. Luff flicked his hand, and a flame flew out and landed on Berg's body. Berg's body immediately started burning. Kamiya had a puzzled look on her face. She did not know why Luff was doing this, but what happened next shocked her. She saw an extremely weak soul struggling out of Berg's body. It was a very strange dot-shaped soul. It looked like a human dot-shaped creature, but it wasn't completely human. It had the characteristics of an animal, and its face looked like a fox. 9 furry fox tails fluttered behind it. 9-tailed fox. Kamiya cried out in surprise. She didn't expect that the soul of a 9-tailed fox would come out of Berg's body. The 9-tailed fox was an alien creature from another dimension. It had a deep-seated grudge against the humans in the Rune World. Chapter 23. The person Kamiya was waiting for. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL, 9-tailed fox. Luff asked curiously. He did not know much about the Rune World. The only information he had was obtained from the Dawn Inn's library. The 9 demon foxes are foreign creatures from other dimensions. They are extremely powerful and hate humans, Kamiya explained. I didn't expect the Prince of the Simon Empire to be a foreign creature. How interesting. Luff understood. No wonder the once powerful Simon Empire was rapidly declining. Even the royal bloodline had been invaded by foreign creatures. The empire would collapse sooner or later. The moment the 9-tailed fox's soul appeared, it was burned to death by the flames Luff controlled. Luff's voice was cold. He said to Kamiya casually, I don't know about the matters of the Simon Empire, and I don't want to know either. But if anyone smells a rat about Berg, you can say this. He told Camia the contents of the illusion. Then he looked at her and said seriously, I know you are a calm person. This was voluntary. We don't owe each other anything. It happened, and we don't regret it. Just treat it as a beautiful encounter. Goodbye. We may never see each other again. After saying this, Luffa's figure disappeared into thin air. Of course, he had not left the prince's residence. Before he left, he had to clean out Berg's vault. After a few times robbing vaults, Luff found himself somewhat addicted. After Luff left, Camia was stunned for a long time. She recalled what he had said. He had said that what had happened was voluntary and there was no debt. There was no regret. Just treat it as a beautiful encounter. These words sounded pretty good at first, but after careful consideration, it was actually Luff who was shirking the responsibility. Shameless, B*****. Did he think that she would pester him? Camia's feelings were extremely complicated toward the man who had taken her. He had destroyed her hope of advancing to the rune level. But he had saved her once again. If it were not for him, she would still have been tainted by Berg, and the Wilson family would have been eliminated by the Empress. And last night, she had even taken the initiative to ask him to have sex with her. When she thought of these things, Camia's face was boiling hot, and even her ears were suffused with pink. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. When she was 5 years old, Earl Wilson had accidentally obtained a rune in the battlefield of the heavens. No one could understand the correct pronunciation, but Camia, who was only 5 years old, managed to understand it. The rune was love. Soon after Camia had got the love rune, she had met the Shauna Rune Master. The Shauna Rune Master divined for her and told her that she would have a chance when she was 18 years old. She would face her most critical moment. It was also the moment of luck. On this day, she would meet someone who could turn the love rune into a high-level rune. If she met this person, her future would be limitless. If she did not meet him, her future would be dark. There was even the possibility that her life would be in danger. She had just turned 18 this year and the Queen had threatened Earl Wilson to marry Camia to Berg. As expected, the result of Shauna's divination had come true. The Queen had always regarded the Wilson family as a thorn in her side. All these years, she had been looking for an opportunity to weaken the power of the Wilson family. On this point, Earl Wilson and Camia had always thought that the prestige of the family had caused the king to feel fear. Such a situation was not rare in history. The monarch would always weaken the power of his subjects. Earl Wilson was dedicated to the empire and the human race. He had not put up any resistance. When Camia saw the soul of the nine-tailed fox crawl out of Berg's body, she had immediately realized that this matter was not simple. Berg was the descendant of a foreign creature and a human. The reason for this guess was that there were many examples in history where foreign creatures could transform into the appearance of humans. After having sex with humans, half-human and half-foreign creatures like Berg could be left behind. Although he looked human on the surface, his soul was indeed foreign. King Simon should not have any problems, so it must be the Queen. The seemingly dignified and virtuous Queen was actually a foreign creature in disguise. This made Camia feel a lingering fear. This involved a huge secret. She had to find an opportunity to tell her father about this. However, before that, she still had to follow that B*****'s words and rearrange the disguise of the new house. Camia had just stood up when she frowned slightly. She could still feel the pain left behind by last night's joy. B*****. She gritted her teeth and cursed. For some reason, whenever she thought of this man, it was difficult for her to calm down. Camia shook her head and forcefully drove Luffa's figure out of her mind to calm herself down. Then, she began to decorate the house according to his instructions. After finishing the decorations, Camia closed her eyes to rest. In her mind, a blue rune was emitting a gentle light. This blue rune was really a love rune that Kamiya had obtained when she was young. She had a total of 8 runes, and among them, most of the big ones were red or green runes. Only one rune was cyan. Last night, it was still a cyan rune, but after a night, it had become a high-level blue rune. In an instant, Kamiya understood everything. A smile that she had never seen before appeared on her face. It was a pure and happy smile. She smiled and muttered, "So you are that B*****. Chapter 24. The Transformation of Kamiya. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. The ice-like heart melted completely at this moment. Kamiya's love runes were poison to her even if they were medicine. Once she fell in love with someone, she could not change her mind until death. That was why she had always maintained a cold attitude, preventing herself from falling in love and being influenced by lust. She had even meditated on a tranquil rune, allowing her mind to remain calm and tranquil at all times. She looked amiable on the outside, but she was ice cold on the inside. All these years, not a single man had been able to enter her eyes, much less enter her heart. She had been waiting for the man that Sauna had said she was destined to meet. As long as this man appeared, she would be able to transform her love rune from a green rune to a blue rune. Although blue runes could not be compared to purple runes and were not as rare and precious as purple runes, they were still the highest grade of runes that an ordinary person could possess. They were extremely rare and valuable to a rune master. As a top-grade rune, blue runes possessed magical abilities that far surpassed those of other grades. They were incomparably powerful. She had not expected that the person she had been waiting for was actually the man who had taken possession of her last night. This made Kamiya feel both surprised and flustered. The love rune had been triggered, and she now possessed the charming and mysterious man from last night. Even Kamiya could not control this mysterious man. She knew nothing about this man's background. Was he really worthy of her lifetime of love? Kamiya shook her head. No matter what, she believed in Sauna's divination. This man could not only upgrade her love runes, but he was also worth her life to entrust to him. When she thought of this, Kamiya heaved a sigh of relief. Her heart was filled with sweet joy. Her originally frozen heart melted in an instant. The change in her state of mind made her move with a bright and beautiful expression. She no longer had that elegant and distant expression. Her entire temperament was sublimated in an instant. She was like an angel that had fallen into the mortal world. She was tainted with some of the aura of the mortal world. The change in her state of mind made her originally light blue runes become even more intense. So, this is what it feels like to fall in love with someone. The expression on Kamiya's face was incomparably complicated. If she had known it was him earlier, she wouldn't have treated him so coldly. She would have told him everything so that he would not leave. It was all her fault. A trace of regret flashed across Kamiya's pretty face. She did not even know his name. In the vast rune world, where was she going to find him? Kamiya's mood turned from joy to disappointment. Someone who knew Kamiya would definitely be stunned to see her like this, because no one in this world, whether it was family or friends, had ever seen her this way. Was this still the elegant and distant Kamiya that they knew? She was simply a girl in love and letting her imagination run wild. In the treasury at the bottom of Prince Berg's mansion, Luff was wantonly plundering the items in the treasury. This treasury was more than 200 square meters, and it contained all kinds of treasures. There were more than 10 million gold coins in it. The wooden boxes containing the gold coins were piled up in the corner. There were so many good things. Even the floor was made of a layer of gold. Too extravagant. Luffa's eyes were shining. Compared to this place, Charles and Kelt's vaults were like sparrows' nests. Just the area alone was comparable to a small palace. There were countless treasures scattered on the wooden shelves. The assets of the entire vault were inestimable. One could imagine how many people Berg had plundered over the years to gather so much wealth. Luff quickly moved the things in the vault into his own space. While he was looting, he saw an area dedicated to women's jewelry. It was extremely precious, and one item looked very similar to what the queen had been wearing today. He immediately understood. This was not so much Berg's vault as the queen's vault. Then he thought of the nine-tailed fox's soul in Berg's body. Everything was clear. The queen was not a person, at least not her soul. It was very likely that her body was already occupied by the nine-tailed fox. That was why her luck was black. Only foreign creatures could have black fog. No wonder the Simon Empire was weak. BDNVL.M. It looked like the queen was taking care of the country, but the lives of the people were not improving. On the contrary, they were getting worse. The queen was the one who was really taking advantage of the Simon Empire. In order to play the role of a wise queen, she definitely could not have too many assets on the surface. That was why her assets had all been placed with Berg. Because he was her biological son, strictly speaking, Berg was also a foreign god fire. She trusted Berg very much, that was why she placed all these things here. Now, all these things belonged to Luff. The precious things were kept in his dimensional pocket. He didn't even let them touch the floor. He plundered everything. As for the matter of the Simon Empire and Kemia, he couldn't be bothered to think about it, nor did he care about it. This country had nothing to do with him. As for Kemia, it was a love affair. After last night, he had nothing to do with Kemia anymore. After killing Berg and emptying 3 coffers in a row, Luff could be said to have far more wealth than the royal family. It just so happened that the matter of the Simon Empire was over, and Luff also planned to go somewhere else to change his life. Chapter 25. The Queen's Private Vault. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. It was also a good opportunity to stay away from this woman, Kemia. Who knew how this woman would retaliate against him afterward? For a woman of noble birth, her heart was incomparably noble. After she recovered, she might even ask him to take responsibility for his actions. Luff was not stupid enough to think that Kemia could fall in love with him. A woman like Kemia would never fall in love with a man. Luff shook his head and dismissed Kemia's figure from his mind. Then, he disappeared into the basement. When he reappeared, he was already in the quiet room of the Dawn Inn. He removed the illusion. He was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he was calculating his gains and losses for the day. He had killed Berg and a bunch of rotten noble children and emptied out 2 of the vaults. Especially Berg's coffers. The number of resources in his dimensional pocket had increased to a terrifying level. They were the personal coffers of the Queen of the Simon Empire. Just the gold coins alone were worth tens of millions. If the other items were put together, they would be worth at least several hundred million. Not only was the number of gold coins terrifying, but there were also all sorts of strange treasures inside. For example, there were 2 black pieces of iron in there, and they were quite large. Luff seemed to have seen it in a book. These iron pieces came from the battlefields of the heavens, and their origins were mysterious. He did not know exactly what they were used for. Other than that, there were all kinds of medicines and gemstones. The Queen's vault was really astonishing. Even Luff felt a little uneasy. If a thief stole something, he would feel very happy if he stole gold, silver, jewelry, or some money. However, if he opened the door and found that the entire room was filled with money, he would feel a little terrified. He would think that he had gone to the wrong place and would not even dare to make a move. However, Luff did not think that way. These people's wealth came from exploiting the people. He did not feel any pressure at all. As long as he could take it, he could not let these damn royals and nobles benefit. After checking all the treasures in the space, Luff was extremely satisfied. Seeing the sky gradually brightening, Luff laughed. After daybreak, the Simon Empire will be in chaos. Borg had been killed on the night of his wedding. Queen Noda's private vault had been completely plundered, leaving nothing behind. It would be strange if it wasn't chaotic. The queen would probably go crazy. Thinking of this, Luff was very excited. He tidied up his clothes and walked out of the quiet room. 15th Young Master, have you finished your cultivation? After seeing Luff, some of the guests and maids greeted him. Luff also responded with a smile. These were all his witnesses. As long as they were present, he would have a perfect alibi, so he did not panic at all. Other than Luff, there were also other people who walked out of the quiet rooms one after another. Before entering the hall, he could hear the discussions inside. Luff is too desperate. He stayed in the meditation room for 3 days and didn't even attend Prince Berg's wedding. There's no other way. Other than Kamiya, only Luff has a chance to pass the rune school's test. That's why he is so focused on cultivating and trying to break through again before heading to the Shizhou Empire. Sigh, the rune school's test is too difficult. It's more than difficult. Those who can enter the rune school of the Shizhou Empire are all elites among the elites of the 9 great empires. There's still half a month before the academy's test. All of them are crazy. They don't even sleep. They are all training hard. Sigh, I also want to join the rune school of the Shizhou Empire. If I pass, my family will have great honor. Forget it, your talent is similar to mine. Our chances are not great, so we can only take the entrance exam for our own country's academy. Hearing the conversation of these people, Luff understood why so many people had been cultivating in the quiet room over the past few days. It turned out that the Shizhou Empire's rune school had begun their entrance exam. They walked into the lobby on the first floor. After seeing Luff, the eyes of the young lady at the front desk lit up, and she smiled gently. Young Master's training has ended. Yes. Luff nodded with a smile. He looked at her and asked with a smile, it's so late. Why aren't you resting? He had a good impression of this young lady. That when he had played Celt yesterday morning, she had always adhered to her principles and defended her attitude. It made her feel very comfortable and trusted. I took a nap in the afternoon. Thank you for your concern, young master. When she heard Luff's concern, she felt sweet in her heart. It was as if she had eaten honey. A layer of red appeared on her face, then, she continued, oh right, 15th young master, yesterday morning, Celt came to look for you. He said that he wanted you to attend Prince Berg's wedding. I refused according to your instructions. Luff pretended to be surprised. He was stunned for a moment and asked in a surprised tone, Celt. Oh, I think I met him once in the library. Why would he invite me to Prince Berg's wedding? I'm not familiar with him. As for Prince Berg, I don't even know him. Thank you for refusing on my behalf. It's what I should do, she replied with a smile. I'm a little tired after cultivating for so long. I'll go back to my room to rest now. After bidding farewell, Luff returned to his room. The room had been tidied and cleaned up. The water in the bath had also been heated up. After a comfortable hot bath, Luff looked at the red glow in the sky outside the window and felt that the show was about to begin. It was up to the woman to deal with it, but it was none of his business. Chapter 26. The Prince is in a mess. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. As soon as the rumors died down, he would leave the Simon Empire and enjoy his life. For now, let's sleep comfortably. He had drunk quite a lot that evening. Although the smell of alcohol had dissipated when he returned, his head was still a little drowsy. As Luff was in a night of deep sleep, the prince's residence was in a mess as if an explosion had occurred. In the new room, Kamiya screamed, someone. Her voice was extremely shrill. She began to act according to how Luff had specifically told her before he left. At this time, there were already some maids and soldiers outside. After hearing Kamia's scream, they looked at each other but did not have any other reaction. They had seen this kind of thing many times. No one dared to disturb Prince Berg's good work. Their only thought was that Prince Berg was really energetic. He had started to have fun early in the morning. Just as they pretended not to hear anything, Kamia came out of the room with a terrified expression. She shouted, "Someone has killed Prince Berg. Someone help. Prince Berg had been killed." The entire residence was in an uproar. Everyone in the prince's mansion was in a great panic. Prince Berg had died. And it was on his wedding night. As servants, although Berg's death had nothing to do with them, they could be dragged to be buried with him. Once the royal family flew into a rage, they would be held responsible, and everyone who might have come to the prince's mansion would be implicated. This was especially so for the soldiers of the prince's residence. They had neglected their duties and had not looked after them. In short, under the fury of the royal family, no one could escape unscathed. The prince's residence was in complete chaos. Look after the princess well. Don't let her take a single step out of this place. If she dares to leave without permission, kill her on the spot. The butler of the prince's residence had a gloomy expression that was filled with ruthlessness. After saying that, he hurried towards the imperial palace. Kamia looked at the soldiers surrounding the room and didn't say anything. She silently retreated back to her room, and the frightened expression on her face disappeared. She yawned out of boredom and leisurely lay down on the soft bed. Thinking of the man who had taught her how to perform, she couldn't help but laugh. "You killed the groom, slept with the bride, and left after putting on your pants, leaving me to clean up your mess alone. What a shameless B*****. Her words were filled with sweetness. She wasn't worried at all about what would happen next. Even if the Grand Tutor came to investigate, no matter what he found, Berg's death had nothing to do with her. As long as Berg hadn't been killed by her, the royal family had no reason to touch her. Moreover, Berg was dead. There was no need for her to stay in the prince's residence, and the engagement with Berg would naturally be dissolved. She had even thought that as long as she left the prince's residence, she would immediately head to the Shizhao Empire to participate in the Rune Academy's assessment. But for now, she would act according to what that man had said. As for the queen, even though she knew that she was most likely related to a foreign creature, there was nothing she could do about her at the moment. The current Wilson family was indeed in decline. Earl Wilson was heavily injured and there was nothing she could do about it. Moreover, the king doted on the queen very much. He even let her handle the court affairs on his behalf, deceiving a large number of commoners and winning over the hearts of the people. It was impossible to shake the queen now. Therefore, Kamia could only strengthen herself. Only when she had enough strength or formed a powerful force could she move to the queen. Just as she was thinking about this, she heard footsteps outside. Kamia quickly got up from the bed. There was still a frightened look on her face as if she had not recovered from Berg's death. Bang! The door was violently pushed open. The king and queen arrived together, followed by a large number of soldiers. When they had found out that Berg had been killed, they had immediately come over. Moreover, they both suspected that Kamia was the one who had killed Berg. Therefore, after pushing open the door, the king's first words were, "You killed Berg." His tone was filled with fury. He emitted a shocking killing intent. As the king of the Simon Empire, he controlled the life and death of anyone in the Simon Empire. He held a supreme position. Not only that, King Simon himself was also a powerful rune master. As the aura was released, Kamia's expression changed slightly. She felt a pressure and even her breathing stopped. The queen frowned. She could tell at a glance that Kamia was no longer a virgin. It seemed that Berg had raped her and had been killed by her in anger. If that was the case, the plan could only be considered half successful. Should she kill her or not? Just as the queen was thinking, Kamia's voice trembled as she said, "I didn't kill Berg. If you didn't kill him, then who did? The king's voice was cold. You should understand, the Grand Tutor can use runes to reconstruct what happened here. It's useless for you to deny it. Hearing this, Kamiya suddenly raised her head. Her eyes were red, and tears flickered. With humiliation and anger, she shouted at the king, I said I didn't kill Berg. After Berg forced me, I was really angry. I didn't expect that he would be killed. Looking at the angry Kamiya, the king frowned. She didn't seem to be faking it. He tried his best to suppress his anger. Then tell me, who killed Berg? Kelt. Kamiya said a name. Chapter 27. The Killer, Kelt. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. Kamiya looked angry and relieved. You didn't hear wrong. It's Kelt. Kelt. How could it be him? Humph, are you kidding me? King Simon was completely furious. Who didn't know who Kelt was? Even if he had 10 guts, he wouldn't dare to kill Berg. Moreover, he had no motive to kill Berg. These nobles completely relied on the royal family to enjoy a rich and noble life. How could they do such a stupid thing that would destroy their future? It really was Kelt. If you don't believe me, you can wait for the Grand Tutor to come and use the runes to reconstruct what happened. You'll understand. If I didn't see Kelt with my own eyes, would never have thought that this obedient dog of his would actually kill his master. Kamiya's expression was filled with satisfaction. Before the Grand Tutor comes, tell me what happened. The queen, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. If what you say is different from what the Grand Tutor reconstructed, I will personally kill you. If you want to hear it, fine. She was waiting for this sentence. Kamiya thought of what the man had told her and repeated it in detail. After the wedding banquet, my maid brought me a pot of sobering soup, but I never expected that my maid would actually drug my sobering soup. It was the incurable nine-tailed fox's aphrodisiac poison. As she said this, her voice was filled with anger and fear. That was the maid who grew up with me. I don't know who bewitched her, but she actually poisoned me. I don't think you need me to explain what happened next. He's your husband. The queen's tone became heavier. Get to the point. Then, Kelt suddenly appeared in the room, imprisoned me, and said something to Berg. I didn't hear a single word. It was as if their voices were cut off. As they spoke, their emotions became more and more agitated. In the end, Kelt suddenly ambushed Berg, killed him, and burned him to ashes. After that, he ran away. From the beginning to the end, he didn't say a single word to me. Hearing Kamiya's description, the king and queen frowned. They knew that this person was definitely not Kelt. The real Kelt was one of Berg's dogs. Moreover, he was addicted to lust. There was no reason for him to kill Berg, and it was impossible for him to not be attracted to a beauty like Kamiya. Someone. The king shouted, call the guards from last night. The guards from the prince's residence were trembling with fear. Reporting to the king, all the guards from last night have disappeared. We suspect that they were killed by the murderer. Humph, the king's expression was extremely gloomy. If what you said is true, then this person is definitely not an ordinary person. He is powerful. Not only can he turn invisible, but he can also change his appearance and control flames. He even has abilities that we have never thought of. Such a person definitely cannot be a good for nothing like Kelt. No matter who it is, even if the entire Simon Empire is turned upside down, this person must be executed. Men, inform the marquises to come over and look for Kelt. We have already sent people to search the hotels in the imperial capital. Who went out last night? At the same time, search for all the outsiders and their movements within the past half a month. Yes. The soldiers began to move, and the whole of the imperial city was filled with killing intent. When the sun rose, the imperial city became lively. However, the commoners discovered that the atmosphere today was a little strange. Rows of soldiers were patrolling the streets, searching house by house. The other government departments also had a large flow of personnel. Especially the high-ranking officials. They all rushed to the prince's residence with surprised expressions. What happened? I don't know. I just woke up and it's already like this. Sigh, something big is going to happen again. Lower your voice. The commoners all had terrified expressions. Some elderly people squatted in a corner and recalled the past. The Simon Empire wasn't like it was now. Although the Days weren't considered wealthy, at least they could be considered happy. The royal family's attitude towards the commoners was also very friendly, but now, the Days were getting more and more miserable. They did not even have enough food to eat. Many people died every day. Was this still the imperial city? As for the other cities of the Simon Empire, they were even worse than the imperial city. The commoners lived a more miserable life. In the prince's residence. At this time, more and more people came in. Everyone had a solemn expression. Wilson's entire body was shrouded in a thick murderous aura. He walked into the prince's residence with a livid expression. The prince's residence, which was filled with guests last night, was filled with a somber killing intent today. When Wilson had heard the news of Berg's death, he had rushed over as fast as he could. He thought that someone had killed Camia. No matter what, he had to hold on to Camia. At the very most, he would fight it out. If the Simon Empire did not want to cause great chaos, then the king would have to compromise. Once the Wilson family rebelled against the royal family, even the king would have to consider it carefully. Brother, you're here. Camia looked at Wilson, tears streaming down her face. Her expression was filled with grievance, anger, and humiliation. I really didn't kill Berg, but he deserved to die. Sister, don't cry. What exactly happened? The moment Wilson entered, he went straight for Camia. He completely ignored the king and queen. His body was filled with a terrifying killing intent. Anyone could see it. However, no one said anything. This included the king and queen. Everyone knew that once the Wilson family was driven mad, the Simon Empire would definitely be in turmoil. Chapter 28. Celt was long dead. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL ENV. This was the reason why the king was afraid of the Wilson family. The Wilson family had too much power and prestige, especially in the army. Because of this, King Simon had no choice but to weaken the Wilson family. But he was not stupid enough to force the Wilson family into a dead end. Camia recounted what had happened. After hearing it, Wilson was stunned. At first, he thought that his sister had killed Berg, and he was ready to fight the royal family. But it wasn't her. He felt a little regretful. He had been patient with the damn royal family for a long time. If it weren't for Earl Wilson's suppression, he would have rebelled a long time ago. He would rather be sent to the battlefield of the heavens than stay in the imperial capital, which was deliberately suppressed. He didn't know how long he would have to wait for this opportunity. As for the matter of Berg forcing his sister to submit, Wilson did not believe it at all. How could he not know Camia's character? If Berg had really forced Camia, she would not shed tears. Instead, she would act as if nothing had happened and try her best to take revenge on the entire royal family. She would not stop until she achieved her goal. In terms of intelligence, Camia was the #1 person in the Wilson family. Even Wilson had to admire her. Such a person could cry. At least Wilson had never seen Camia cry. Before they had got married, Camia must have expected what would happen next, but she had been extremely calm. It was abnormal. Everything in front of him was too abnormal. Wilson looked at Camia seriously, but he could not see anything. But he knew that Camia was definitely lying and pretending. In that case, as a brother, he had to cooperate well. After hearing Kamia's words, he deliberately pretended to be very angry and roared, "What? Berg drugged you and forced you." He turned to the king. "Your Majesty, you have to help my sister." There was nothing wrong with his words. But his expression was too fake. It was obvious that he was pretending. Kamia was speechless. She covered her head with her hand. Her brother's acting was too exaggerated. B****. The king scolded Wilson loudly. "Kamia is Berg's wife. She should do anything. Besides, Berg has already been killed. There's not even a corpse left. How do you want me to stand up for you?" Beside him, a few silent counts and dukes wanted to laugh, but they did not dare to. They stepped forward to smooth things over. "Your Majesty, don't be angry. Wilson is in a rush and cares too much about Kamia. That's why he acted so rashly. Don't take it to heart. Wilson, quickly apologize to your Majesty. Your Majesty, the most important thing now is to find the murderer." King Simon was annoyed. These officials always spoke useless nonsense. If they were really asked to do something, they would not be able to. He shouted outside in annoyance, "Is the Grand Tutor not here yet? Where is Kelt? Why isn't he here yet? Hurry up and send someone to speed him up. You bunch of good.4.nothings, what are you standing here for?" Just as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man who had a sorrowful expression immediately knelt outside. "Your Majesty, my son, Kelt, is dead. He died at home. Your Majesty must make a decision for me." 5 or 6 servants followed behind him, carrying a corpse covered with a white cloth. They lifted it and took a look. They frowned slightly. The deceased was indeed Kelt. An old man went forward to carefully examine it, then said to the crowd, "Kelt was crushed to death by a huge force. All the bones in his body were crushed, and he has been dead for a day." "He died a day ago?" Wilson asked in puzzlement. "Then who went to my house to pick up the bride yesterday?" He clearly remembered that Kelt was among the people who had picked up the bride yesterday. When the crowd heard that, they were shocked. Just this alone could basically eliminate Kamia's suspicion, because, from the day of the wedding, Kelt had been in everyone's sight. That meant that the murderer had long disguised himself as Kelt and sneaked into the prince's mansion. It was all for the purpose of killing Berg. It could be seen that it was premeditated. "That person is the murderer." A voice came from afar. An old man with white hair walked over and sighed softly. "Yesterday, I saw the person who pretended to be Kelt. I felt that there was something wrong with him. For example, although he was smiling, his eyes were extremely cold. At that time, I didn't think too much about it. After all, I don't know Kelt very well. Sigh, I didn't notice it in time." This old man was the Grand Tutor of the Simon Empire. He was almost 300 years old this year. He had gone through 4 changes of kings of the Simon Empire and rarely appeared. Only for important matters of the royal family would he appear. Even though he was king, Simon still had to be polite when he saw the Grand Tutor. "Grand Tutor." King Simon bowed. "Thank you for appearing this time." Before he could finish, the Grand Tutor waved his hand. "Your Majesty, there's no need to say more. I know and understand. Let's begin." After saying that, he walked into the new room. A green rune appeared above his head. Holy light enveloped the entire room. Then, an image appeared in front of him. In the image, a maid walked out with a hangover soup, and Kamia drank the hangover soup. Kamia was also watching. These images were her experiences. What happened after the courage was different from what happened to her. The real situation was that after Berg came in, the man followed him in, but in this image, he didn't appear at all. What happened after that was completely different from what actually happened. Chapter 29. The truth is revealed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. Kamiya knew that these were all illusions set up by that man. But she could not help but feel a little worried. She felt relieved when she saw what happened next. The murderer, disguised as Kelt, had indeed appeared. After talking with Berg for a few minutes, the two of them seemed to be arguing. Their emotions were getting more and more agitated. Then, Kelt suddenly had a ferocious expression. He launched a sneak attack on Berg, burned Berg's body into ashes, and escaped from the royal mansion. The scene ended here. Kamiya secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, she still pretended to be indignant, and at the same time, she was extremely shocked. How did he do it? This was unbelievable. What she saw was no different from the real thing. When she said that it was an illusion, she didn't really believe it because it sounded too unbelievable. Although she had heard that illusion runes could create illusions, they were still very easy to recognize. Especially in front of a 7-star rune master like the Grand Tutor, it was usually impossible to successfully disguise. But now, it had successfully fooled everyone. Why was his illusion rune so powerful? Kamiya's heart had an indescribable emotion. There was love, admiration, and pride. If one had to describe it in one sentence, it would be, "My man is so powerful." Women were all attracted to strong people. After the broadcast, the runic shadow above the Grand Tutor's head disappeared. The Grand Tutor looked tired and was panting heavily. "Your Majesty, my runes have not been upgraded to blue runes. Otherwise, I would have heard what they said." "Thank you for your hard work, Grand Tutor," King Simon said softly. The Grand Tutor waved his hand. He was really too old. His life had already come to an end. It would consume a large amount of energy to not activate a single rune. He raised his eyelids slightly and glanced at Kamiya before leaving the prince's residence with the help of the others. The king's expression was solemn. "Pass down my orders. Every hotel, especially those who are over 30 years old, must investigate the movements over their guests over the past few days, especially at night. If anyone leaves the hotel at night without knowing their movements, arrest them all and interrogate them. Give me a cup of tea. Anyone who dares to disobey will be executed." The king's voice was extremely cold, causing everyone present to shiver. After this order was given, who knew how many more people would die? The Simon Empire was about to change. After a long time, King Simon looked at Kamiya and sighed. "Berg is dead, and your marriage contract is void. What are your plans?" Since it was proven that it was not Kamiya, the Simon Empire would not continue to make things difficult for her. "I want to go to the Shizhao Empire to participate in the Rune Academy's assessment." Kamiya's expression was desolate as she replied seriously, "I don't want to stay here. I want to leave." "Sure." Just as Kamiya finished speaking, the queen nodded her head in agreement. Everyone looked at the queen in surprise, including King Simon and Kamiya herself. Many people knew that the queen had always been against Kamiya. They had thought that she would make things difficult for Kamiya, but she had agreed so readily. Even Kamiya herself had not expected this. The queen said casually, "Although Berg is dead, you are still husband and wife. I think the news of Berg's death will be a great shock to you. It will be good for you to go out and relax. Moreover, the Rune Academy in the Shirua Empire will start soon. If you participate in the assessment, you can also let the students of the other empires see the genius of our Simon Empire." There wasn't a single problem with the reason. As for the real reason, only she herself knew. It was the prince's residence's vault, her personal vault. If Berg was here, then nothing would happen. But now that Berg was dead, if Kamiya didn't leave and stayed in the prince's residence, then once the vault was in Kamiya's hands, all her efforts over the years would have been in vain. That was why she had agreed to let Kamiya leave the Simon Empire. "Thank you." After thanking her, Kamiya stood up and walked out without the slightest bit of reluctance. She didn't want to stay here for even a moment. Not a single person stopped her, including the king. His son was dead, and his plan had failed. If he forcefully kept Camia, he would only anger Earl Wilson. What he wanted was to weaken the Wilson family, not the betrayal of the Wilson family. Young Wilson followed closely behind Camia. On the way, he had wanted to ask about the things in the picture, but Camia only glared at him. Wilson swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth and followed behind him. He had a lot of things to say, but he could not say them. He felt really uncomfortable. But he could see that his sister was in a good mood. The closer they were to home, the more relaxed Camia looked. When she walked into the house, a smile appeared on her face. It made Wilson believe his own thoughts. Berg definitely hadn't bullied Camia. They went to the natural lake in the backyard. An old man was fishing by the lake. It was their father, Earl Wilson. He was one of the 12 guardians of the human race. The 12 guardians were the powerhouses who led the defense on the heavenly battlefield. There were only 12 guardians in the entire Rune world. "Father, I've waited for that person." Camia had just arrived, and this was the first thing she said. Chapter 30. Earl Wilson's Joy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Simple MTL Editor. Simple MTL. Camia knew that her father had always been worried about her. Earl Wilson, who was fishing, suddenly stood up when he heard this. He looked at the genuine smile on Camia's face and laughed loudly. Good. He looked at his daughter's genuine smile. It meant that not only did that person appear, but his daughter was also very satisfied. Then that was enough. Even if he died, this girl would not fall from the Wilson family. His nerves, which had been tense for many years, relaxed, and his injuries became even more serious. He spat out a mouthful of black blood. Father. Camia and little Wilson nervously went forward to support Earl Wilson. Earl Wilson waved his hand and wiped the bloodstains carelessly. It's nothing. I'm just old. He suddenly remembered the spiritual perception that had probed his residence yesterday. He smiled and said, "Is he in the wedding procession?" Hearing this, Camia was stunned for a moment. Father, how did you know? Our spiritual perception had a short contact. His soul is very powerful, very young, but very pure. I've never seen a young man with such powerful spiritual energy. Who is he? I'm not sure about his real identity. Camia told him everything. This time, she was telling the truth. However, there were some things that Camia skipped. For example, she did not tell him that after the two were poisoned, they had sex. She also did not tell him about Luffa's specific appearance. Otherwise, if little Wilson found out, he would turn the entire imperial capital upside down. However, it was only a simple description, and it still shocked little Wilson. The person who killed Berg was actually the person his sister had been waiting for. Was this man so powerful that he could even fool the Grand Tutor's detection runes? This was the Grand Tutor, a 7-star rune master who had lived for more than 300 years. It wasn't easy to fool him. Moreover, according to Camia's description, he could also change his appearance, control water, fire, invisibility, and metal. Wilson believed that his talent was outstanding, and he had heard of many geniuses. However, he had never heard of anyone who could possess such runes at such a young age. No wonder his sister had not wanted to speak on the way home. This kind of thing could only be said safely at home. Seeing that sister is so happy, she must be very satisfied. The moment he said this, Camia's face immediately turned red. Satisfied, she was very satisfied. It was just that she did not even know his name or where he was. Perhaps he had already left the Simon Empire. With his ability, if he wanted to quietly escape the Simon Empire, he would not attract anyone's attention at all. He had many abilities. Just his disguising and invisibility abilities would make it very difficult to capture him. In a few days, she would leave the Simon Empire and head to the Rune School of the Illumination Empire to take the assessment. She didn't know when she would be able to meet him in the future. Thinking of this, she felt a little sad. Unknowingly, she was worried about that man again. Dawn in. As soon as Luff woke up, he heard a commotion outside. He opened the door and took a look. It turned out that someone was asking about the whereabouts of the guests last night. He was secretly happy. The commotion had already spread to the capital of the Simon Empire. The young lady from the front desk was also there. The first thing she saw was Luff. She immediately revealed a sweet smile. "I'm sorry, 13th young master. I've disturbed your rest." "It's nothing." "What happened?" Luff pretended not to know what had happened. "Prince Berg was killed during his wedding yesterday. We are now investigating the whereabouts of last night's guests." "Right, Kelt died yesterday too." "Kelt died too." Luff pretended to be a little surprised. "What happened to him?" The young lady told him the general story and then sighed softly. Fortunately, it proved Miss Kamia's innocence in the end. Alas, the Simon Empire is getting more and more chaotic. "You know Kamia?" Luff asked when she mentioned Kamia. "Of course. Kamia is not only the most beautiful woman in the Simon Empire, but also a good friend of our Mississippi. She often comes to Dawn Inn to visit our Mississippi. Our Miss comes from the Dawn family." So that was how it was. No wonder a little maid knew Kamia. As they were talking, a few soldiers walked over, intending to interrogate Luff. Before Luff could speak, the young lady began to explain, "You don't have to investigate 13th young master. He has been cultivating in the quiet room for the past 2 days and hasn't left. Everyone at Dawn Inn knows this. If you don't believe me, you can interrogate the other guests." Hearing her, the soldiers looked at each other and did not ask any more questions. They turned around and left. Since there were so many people who could testify, there was no need to ask. They were not very serious about this matter. It was just a routine matter. "I didn't expect that Kelt would invite me to the wedding yesterday morning, and then he met with an accident on the same day." Luff sighed with emotion. At the same time, the image of Kamia appeared in his mind. This woman had really acted perfectly according to what he had told her. The Simon Empire is very chaotic. The young lady didn't hide her disgust. She said softly, "I've followed Miss to many countries, but there's nowhere like the Simon Empire. Fortunately, I'm leaving soon. Our Miss will go to the Shizhao Empire to participate in the Rune Academy's assessment.